In the quiet suburbs of Anderson County, South Carolina, Easter Sunday of 2006 was supposed to be a day of celebration and family gatherings. Instead, it became the backdrop for one of the most horrific family massacres in the state's history. 20-year-old Nathaniel Casey Dixon transformed what should have been a peaceful holiday into a nightmarish tableau of violence that would haunt the community for years to come. The morning of April 16, 2006, began like any other Easter Sunday in the Dixon household on Refuge Road. The modest single-story home, nestled in the outskirts of Anderson, showed no outward signs of the tragedy about to unfold. The family had planned to attend church services later that morning, as they did most Sundays. But Nathaniel Dixon had other plans that would forever alter the lives of everyone connected to the family. Before delving into the events of that fateful day, it's essential to understand the complex dynamics that existed within the Dixon household. Nathaniel, known as Casey to his friends and family, had shown signs of behavioral issues throughout his teenage years. Former classmates would later describe him as a loner who struggled to connect with his peers. His relationship with his father, Richard Dixon, was particularly strained, marked by frequent arguments and growing resentment. The family structure itself was blended. Richard Dixon had married Maritza Dixon, and together they were raising their children, including Nathaniel's younger siblings, Taylor and Jenna. Despite outward appearances of normalcy, tension simmered beneath the surface. Nathaniel had recently moved back home after a brief period of living on his own, a situation that only exacerbated the existing family conflicts. On that Easter morning, while most families in Anderson County were preparing for church services or holiday celebrations, the Dixon home became a scene of unimaginable horror. Between 6:30 and 7 a.m., Nathaniel began his murderous rampage. The sequence of events, later reconstructed by investigators, revealed a methodical and brutal assault on his family members. The first victim was his stepmother, Maritza Dixon, age 41. She was shot while still in bed, likely having just awakened. The sound of the gunshot brought Nathaniel's father, Richard Dixon, 45, rushing to investigate. He became the second victim, shot multiple times in what appeared to be a confrontation with his son in the hallway. Perhaps most horrifying was what came next. Nathaniel then turned his attention to his younger siblings. Taylor, his 14-year-old brother, was shot while apparently trying to flee. The final victim was 19-year-old Jenna, who was found in another bedroom. The methodical nature of the killings suggested a level of premeditation that would later become crucial in the prosecution's case. After committing the murders, Nathaniel Dixon didn't immediately flee the scene. In what investigators would later describe as a calculated attempt to establish an alibi, he changed his clothes and drove to a friend's house. He arrived there around 8 a.m., acting as if it were any other morning. This friend would later testify that Dixon appeared calm and collected, even participating in casual conversation and video games. The bodies weren't discovered until later that afternoon when family members, concerned about the Dixons missing Easter services and subsequent family gatherings, went to check on them. The scene they encountered was devastating. Anderson County Sheriff's deputies arrived to find 4 bodies, each bearing multiple gunshot wounds, scattered throughout the house. The investigation moved quickly. Detective Jim Smith, lead investigator on the case, noted that while the crime scene was horrific, the evidence pointing to Nathaniel as the perpetrator was overwhelming. Shell casings found at the scene matched a weapon known to belong to the family, and Nathaniel's attempts to clean up and establish an alibi ultimately proved futile. As news of the massacre spread through Anderson County, law enforcement launched a massive manhunt for Nathaniel Dixon. They didn't have to look far. Within 24 hours of the murders, police located him at a friend's apartment in Belton, about 15 miles from the crime scene. His arrest was surprisingly peaceful, with Dixon offering no resistance when confronted by authorities. The contrast between the violence of his actions and his calm demeanor during arrest struck many observers. Detective Smith would later remark that Dixon showed little emotion when informed of the charges against him, a characteristic that would persist throughout his trial. The trial of Nathaniel Casey Dixon began in 2008, drawing intense media attention to the Anderson County Courthouse. Prosecutors painted a picture of a calculated killer who had methodically planned the elimination of his entire family. Evidence presented at trial included the murder weapon, forensic analysis of the crime scene, and testimony from friends who had interacted with Dixon both before and after the murders. Perhaps most chilling were the details that emerged about Dixon's behavior in the days leading up to the massacre. Witnesses testified that he had seemed increasingly agitated about living at home and had expressed frustration with his family's rules and expectations. However, none had anticipated the violence that would follow. The defense attempted to portray Dixon as a troubled young man who had snapped under the pressure of family conflicts and personal struggles. They presented evidence of his difficult relationship with his father and the challenges of adjusting to life in a blended family. However, the prosecution effectively countered this narrative by highlighting the premeditated nature of the crimes and Dixon's calculated behavior afterward. The Dixon family murders sent shockwaves through Anderson County, a community where violent crime of this magnitude was rare. The case forced many to confront uncomfortable questions about family violence and the sometimes hidden nature of domestic strife. Local schools, where Taylor and Jenna had been students, struggled to help their classmates process the tragedy. The massacre also highlighted the complexities of family dynamics in blended households and the potential for underlying tensions to escalate tragically. Social workers and mental health professionals in the area reported an increase in families seeking counseling in the aftermath of the murders, as parents became more attuned to warning signs of troubled behavior in their children. After a trial that lasted several weeks, the jury took less than 4 hours to reach their verdict. Nathaniel Casey Dixon was found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution had sought the death penalty, presenting the calculated nature of the crimes and the vulnerability of the victims as aggravating factors. However, in a decision that surprised many, Dixon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, in delivering the sentence, noted the heinous nature of the crimes while acknowledging Dixon's young age and the possibility of rehabilitation, though he would never walk free again. The Dixon family massacre remains one of the most notorious crimes in Anderson County history. The case led to several changes in local law enforcement procedures, particularly in how domestic violence situations are handled and monitored. Social services in the area also implemented new programs focused on identifying and intervening in potentially volatile family situations. The house on Refuge Road stood empty for years after the murders, a silent reminder of the tragedy that occurred there. Local residents would cross the street to avoid walking past it, and real estate agents struggled to find buyers willing to purchase a property with such a dark history. Since his incarceration, Nathaniel Casey Dixon has maintained a low profile within the prison system. Reports from corrections officers describe him as a quiet inmate who keeps to himself, much as he did before the murders. He has reportedly participated in some educational programs offered by the prison, but has never publicly expressed remorse for his actions. Occasional interviews with prison staff reveal that Dixon rarely speaks about the murders or his family. This silence has left many questions unanswered about his true motives and the extent of his mental state at the time of the killings. Mental health professionals who have studied the case suggest that his behavior fits patterns seen in other family annihilators, individuals who choose to destroy their entire family unit rather than address their personal grievances in less violent ways. The case of Nathaniel Casey Dixon continues to raise disturbing questions about family violence and the potential for tragedy hiding behind seemingly normal facades. The Easter Sunday massacre serves as a stark reminder that the most dangerous threats sometimes come from within the family unit itself. For the residents of Anderson County, the passage of time has done little to dull the impact of the tragedy. Each Easter Sunday brings painful memories for those who knew the Dixon family, and the case is often referenced in discussions about domestic violence and family mental health. The true motivation behind Nathaniel Dixon's actions may never be fully understood. What drives a young man to systematically eliminate his entire family remains a question that haunts investigators, mental health professionals, and community members alike. The case stands as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of suburban life, and the importance of recognizing and addressing family conflicts before they escalate to violence. The Easter Sunday Massacre of 2006 represents more than just another entry in South Carolina's criminal history. It serves as a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of unresolved family conflicts and the importance of mental health awareness. While Nathaniel Casey Dixon spends his days behind prison walls, the impact of his actions continues to reverberate through Anderson County and beyond, a stark reminder of how quickly domestic tensions can escalate into unimaginable tragedy. The case remains a subject of study for law enforcement training and criminal psychology courses, helping future generations of professionals understand the complex dynamics that can lead to family violence. Meanwhile, the quiet neighborhood where the Dixon family once lived continues to bear the invisible scars of that Easter Sunday morning, when one young man's actions forever changed the fabric of a community and left a legacy of questions that may never be fully answered. Forensic psychologists who have studied the Dixon case point to several key factors that align with typical family annihilator profiles. Dr. Sarah Henderson, a criminal psychologist who consulted on the case, noted distinct patterns in Nathaniel's behavior that preceded the murders. Family annihilators often exhibit a strong need for control, Dr. Henderson explained in her case analysis. In Nathaniel's case, we see classic signs of perceived loss of control over his environment, coupled with an extreme response to family authority structures. The psychological evaluation conducted during his trial revealed disturbing patterns of thought. Dixon exhibited what experts termed catastrophic thinking, a tendency to view situations in extreme terms with no middle ground. His return to the family home after living independently was particularly traumatic, representing what he perceived as a personal failure. The significance of Dixon choosing Easter Sunday for his rampage has been a subject of extensive analysis. Criminal profilers suggest that holiday murders often carry symbolic weight for the perpetrator. Easter, traditionally a time of family togetherness and renewal, may have represented everything Dixon felt he had lost or never truly had. Dr. Marcus Powell, a forensic psychiatrist specializing in family violence, noted in his review of the case the choice of Easter wasn't random. It represented maximum impact, not just for his family, but for the entire community. It was a deliberate desecration of what should have been a sacred family time. As the case passed its 10th anniversary in 2016, new perspectives emerged about its lasting impact on South Carolina's criminal justice system. The Anderson County Sheriff's Department implemented mandatory psychological screening protocols for domestic disturbance calls, directly influenced by lessons learned from the Dixon case. Local schools developed more comprehensive counseling programs, particularly focused on students from blended families experiencing adjustment difficulties. The Dixon Protocol, as it became known in local social services, established new guidelines for identifying at-risk youth, showing signs of extreme family alienation. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of the case has been its impact on the extended Dixon family. Cousins, aunts, and uncles found themselves grappling not only with the loss of their loved ones, but also with the burden of being related to their killer. Many changed their names or moved away from the area, seeking to escape the shadow of their connection to the case. Maria Gonzalez, Maritza Dixon's sister, broke her silence in a rare interview in 2018. Every Easter, we don't just mourn 4 people. We mourn the death of an entire family structure. The ripples of what Casey did that day destroyed connections that went back generations. Recent reports from the South Carolina Department of Corrections provide additional insight into Dixon's life behind bars. While he initially resisted participation in prison programs, by 2020 he had begun engaging in the facility's mental health services and educational opportunities. Prison counselor James Martinez noted, "There's been a subtle shift in his demeanor over the years. The complete emotional detachment we saw during the trial has given way to moments of reflection, though he still struggles to directly address his actions." The Dixon case has become a cornerstone study in modern approaches to family violence prevention. Social workers and law enforcement agencies across the country now use it as a case study in recognizing escalating family tensions before they reach a breaking point. Dr. Rachel Chen, director of the Family Violence Prevention Center at the University of South Carolina, incorporated the case into her curriculum. What makes the Dixon case so valuable from an educational standpoint is how it demonstrates the intersection of multiple risk factors: family blending, authority conflicts, reintegration difficulties, and inadequate support systems. In recent years, the case has gained renewed attention through true crime podcasts and social media discussions. This digital afterlife has brought new challenges for both the community and survivors. Online conspiracy theories and unauthorized documentaries have sometimes threatened to overshadow the real lessons of the tragedy. Local authorities have had to balance public interest in the case with respect for the victims' memories. Anderson County Sheriff's Department maintains strict control over case materials, particularly crime scene photographs, to prevent sensationalization while preserving the case's educational value for law enforcement training. As Nathaniel Casey Dixon continues to serve his life sentence, his case remains a powerful reminder of the importance of mental health awareness and family support systems. The tragedy has shaped a generation of law enforcement officers, mental health professionals, and social workers in South Carolina and beyond. The Easter Sunday Massacre stands as a dark chapter in Anderson County's history, but its legacy has contributed to positive changes in how society approaches family violence and mental health intervention. As one local official noted, sometimes it takes the darkest moments to show us where we need to shine more light.